el muro realmente, pues como que nos ofende, porque nosotros no le ponemos muros a nadie en el mundo.
Y ya ven, Estados Unidos ahorita pues están tratando a la gente como delincuente, porque ya ha habido casos en la frontera que hasta matan a la gente por cruzar la línea.
Hay redadas, están echando mucha gente para acá, muchos mexicanos para acá que no tienen documentos, pero la gente se regresa y se regresa cuantas veces sea.
Asians are one of the fastest growing immigrant groups in America. 12 million already live here, and many believe that it's a positive sign for the economy. Mark New has more from Silicon Valley.
The major thing that drives immigration to the United States is really the state of the American economy. As the economy has slightly improved, I think some of that immigration has picked back up. Particularly from Asian countries, some of that immigration has picked up because we've seen a lot of success, particularly here in Silicon Valley, with startup companies.
To understand the depth of human migration, we have to look back to the dawn of the human species, nearly 200,000 years ago. From Africa towards what is now the Middle East 140,000 years later, driven by the sudden drop in temperature caused by the Ice Age, later on migrating to Australia, up through Russia and Europe, and eventually over the Arctic land bridge to the American and South American continents. We can see that our civilizations as a globe were all formed through patterns of migration. 12,000 years ago is when we see the start of the agricultural revolution, a small domino in what will later become a world with countries basing their profits off of crops, clothing, spices, and other goods, but unfortunately slave labor as well. This then becomes a part of what creates the idea of exploitation and the pairing of profit and dehumanization. Asian immigration shows how the U.S. used law to draw racial boundaries. A key idea here is a racial project, which means the government gives racial meaning to a group and then organizes power and resources around that meaning. For Asian immigrants, that project centered on exclusion. The Chinese Exclusion Act was the first federal law that banned a specific racial group, making Asianness a legal category of threat. Court cases like Ozawa and Tind defined who count as white, and both decisions excluded Japanese and South Asian immigrants, which shows how race was created through immigration law, not biology. Asian workers helped build railroads and support the economy, but they could not naturalize, own land in many states, or fully participate in society. This is what racial capitalism looks like. Asian immigrants were economically necessary but kept socially and politically disposable, creating the perpetual foreigner stereotype that still follows Asian communities today. Mexican immigration reflects another racial project shaped by U.S. economic needs and racial hierarchies. After the U.S. took Mexican territory, Mexicans technically became citizens, but they were immediately treated as non-white and pushed outside full belonging. The state depended on Mexican labor in agriculture, mining, and railroad work, but at the same time built policies and local practices that marked them as outsiders. For example, segregated schools, English-only rules, and constant surveillance. And whenever the economy changed, the government flipped its stance. During the Great Depression, hundreds of thousands of Mexicans, including U.S. citizens, were pushed out through mass repatriation campaigns. Later, Operation Wetback removed many of the same workers the U.S. had just recruited. This quote-unquote need but unwanted pattern didn't just shape labor, it shaped people's lives. Families were separated, communities lived with instability and fear of deportation, and a whole population became essential to the economy but never fully allowed to belong. If immigration suddenly stopped, our food system would collapse, hospitals would lack workers, and innovation would slow down. The economy would be in serious trouble. About 70% of U.S. farm workers are immigrants. More than 1 in 4 doctors and tech workers are foreign-born. Immigrants contribute to over $2.6 trillion to the U.S. economy every year. Policies like Trump's tariffs show that blocking global movement only harms the economy. At the same time, visa insecurity and the fear of deportation keeps wages low and limits immigrants' choices. They are needed, but treated as if they do not belong.
These issues affect real people. As international students, we worry about our visas and about accidentally losing our legal status. Our work options are limited, and this makes us stressed about the future. Second-generation students also feel the pressure. They must balance two cultures and often feel they don't fully belong in either one. These experiences can cause anxiety, homesickness, and a lot of pressure to succeed. Technology helps us stay connected with family and culture through social media. But technology is also used to control immigration, like AI screening and strict digital systems. So even with new technology, inequality still continues.
Today, over 90% of deportations from the U.S. have been of Latino descent, even though not all undocumented immigrants are. Border enforcement is concentrated almost entirely on the U.S.-Mexico border, which makes Mexicans more likely to be targets of deportation. Black immigrants today are also more likely to get arrested due to biased policing, and therefore have higher chances of getting deported for criminal grounds, although unjust sometimes. Deportation has been taken advantage of as such, keeping immigrant labor cheap and exploitable. It instills fear among immigrants, giving little bargaining power for better wages and work conditions. It also prevents workers from unionizing or forming, speaking up for their own rights, and keeps their community suppressed and controlled.
As international students, we worry about every decision we make, especially when it comes to applying for jobs, licenses, and things we do outside. We are also constantly watching the UW My ISSS policies up close, because any small changes may be detrimental to our visas.
Taken together, Asian and Mexican immigration histories show that U.S. immigration policy has never just been about controlling borders. It has been a racial project that defines who belongs and who does not. These systems of exclusion are not abstract as they shape people's lives every day. International students navigate constant anxiety over visas, work authorization, and the fear of making small yet devastating mistakes. Understanding immigration as a racial project explains why these pressures exist. They are not accidents, but outcomes of a long history that ties race to legal status, labor, and rights.